Hi everyone, and thanks for clicking on the video. What I'm going to be going over today is changing the scope housings over between my Spot Hogg Hogfather and my Spot Hogg Fast-Steady XL. The reason why I need to do that is my Fast-Steady XL has the double pin pointer on it at the moment, but my double pin housing is on my Hogfather for some reason. I can't remember why I did that. So I'm fortunate enough this coming weekend I'm going to be getting out and doing a little bit of meat hunting for goats. And the bow that I'm going to be using for that is my Hoyt Carbon Spider Turbo. Now, this did have a Fuse 5-pin hunting sight on it, and the reason why it doesn't at the moment is because I recently managed to talk a friend of mine into getting behind a bow and actually trying it out. And he liked it so much that he bought himself a bow, Bear. And in the interest of getting him up and running, I took the sight off of my bow and we whacked it on his, and we sort of started getting the sighting in process happening and all that sort of stuff. I didn't expect that I'd be getting away for a weekend anytime soon, which is why I wasn't too fussed, but then got a phone call and we're going this coming weekend. So now I'm in a bit of a rush. I've got 4 days to get my setup all sorted so that I can hopefully have a successful weekend. So what I'm planning on doing is using the Fast-Steady XL on my hunting bow with a double pin housing, the double pin pointer. I will be doing a video where I show you guys how I do my broadhead tuning and all that sort of stuff as well. But for this video, what I needed to do was change the housings over. And I need to do it in such a way that the settings are fairly close so that I don't have to spend hours and hours sighting the thing in. And I do have a trick that I use for doing that, and I'm going to be showing you guys how. So I'll bring the camera in closer so that you can see exactly what I'm doing, and I'll talk you through the process I use to swap the housings over. So let's do it. Alright, so I have everything that I need in order to get this job done. It's a pretty quick changeover. It's not something that takes hours and hours to do. The first thing you may be wondering is, why do I have my Spot Hogg Hogget on the table as well? Now, the only thing I wanted to talk to you guys about the Hogget is the fact that the dovetail fits exactly the same block size as any of the Spot Hogg dovetail sights. Now, the reason why that's relevant in this particular case is because when I go out into the bush, I try to make sure that I have spares of everything that I can. So one of those things is my sight. Now, I am planning on putting the Fast-Steady XL on the bow, but if anything goes wrong with this particular sight and I can't repair it in the field or anything like that, I will have my Hogget in my pack, and I will make sure that it is set up so that it is sighted in for my arrows and broadheads, so that if anything goes wrong with this guy, I can just slide it out of the dovetail, slide this one in, and I'm still ready to go. Now, I usually carry a spare rest. My spare rest is a Whisker Biscuit. They never fail. They're fairly easy to set up by eye. And I always have a spare release aid as well. Plus, you know, a couple of string repair material, bits and pieces and things like that. But my advice is, if you can, and you can afford it, try to have some spares of stuff that you're going to be using just in case something goes wrong. Because if you're out in the middle of nowhere, a whole weekend can be ruined because of one thing failing. So let's start by looking. Right. I just remembered why this sight has the double pin on it and this one doesn't, even though this has the double pin pointer. When I used the Hogfather, I was using it for indoor, and I wanted the magnification lens to be between the pin and myself. And the double pin housing allows you to do that with this screw-on bezel. So the first thing I'll do, unscrew the bezel and take the lens out. It's always got this little O-ring so the lens doesn't rattle around in there. Now, the most obvious way to make sure that the two housings go back onto each sight correctly is by looking at the markings on the scope housing bar. Now, on the Fast-Steady XL, it's one long one short one long one short one, and nearly up to the next long one. Now, one of the things that you can do there is you can use the ruler, and it's easy with these two sights because these two sights have the same bar, and you can measure from the clamp on the housing to the edge or to the first line or to any sort of point of reference, so that you end up getting this one put in exactly the same spot. Now, if they were two different sights, you wouldn't be able to do this. You'd probably be able to get it more or less in the right spot, but you'd still have to go and sight it in. And don't get me wrong, I am going to be sighting this in tomorrow, and I'll film that so that you guys can see how I set up my broadhead tune and all that stuff as well. But in the interest of getting these two housings swapped over and not taking all day to do it, I'm going to be counting the lines, I'm going to be doing a little bit of measuring, and I'm going to make sure that they both go into the right place. So first one I'll measure up is the hog father, and we have long line, short line, long line, short line, long line, and a little bit, which works out, if I measure that, to exactly 1 centimeter from the edge of the clamp that holds it to the sight to this cutout over here that you would use for a spanner or something. So from there to there, 1 centimeter exactly. So when I put this housing back into this sight, I need to make sure that that distance is 1 centimeter. So the hog father is 1 centimeter. Now for the fast eddy XL, the distance we have there, measuring exactly the same way, is 8 millimeters. So from that clamp to where the spanner would go, focus please, is 8 millimeters. So I'll write these things down so I don't forget when I change them over. The next thing that I need to do now is loosen up these brackets, which is very easy, especially when you pick the right Allen key. So we got, okay, that was the right Allen key, it just wasn't fitting in because of my own ineptitude, but you know, that's how these things go sometimes. So get that in there, loosen that off, and pull the housing out. Now we'll do the same on this one, get that in there, loosen it off, and pull the housing out. So you can see how the hog father and the fast eddy XL are pretty much the same, apart from obviously the micro adjustability on the hog father. One of the other things that I wish Spot Hogg would do with the hog father is give it the lightweight dovetail like what the fast eddy XL has. So as you can see, the hog father's dovetail is one solid machined piece. It does have these little cutouts all along here to try and reduce the weight a bit. And then if you have a look at the fast eddy XL's dovetail, it's got cutouts on the front and the back, which has removed a lot of material and makes the sight a fair bit lighter. Now the plastic or Delrin or whatever the gearing is that the fast eddy XL has also obviously makes a difference as far as its weight reduction is concerned. And it does have a slightly longer yardage adjustment bar over here compared to the hog father as well. So a couple of slight differences, but for the most part the idea behind the two is exactly the same. I like to try and keep my hunting bow as light as possible, which is why I'm using the fast eddy XL and not the hog father, in case you were wondering. So a bit of a look at the two different housings. You can see the double pin, single pin. This one obviously doesn't have the sticker because this piece gets screwed onto it. Now, when you buy the Fast Eddie XL, you get a couple of different ones of these rings. So this one has 3 rings on it, which helps with the scope housing size compared to your peep size. Like if you move the housing out further, you're not going to have to buy a different size peep sight necessarily because you've got 3 rings of adjustment on your sight housing. But that's not what this video is about, so let's get back into it. So what I want to do now is put this double pin housing into the Fast Eddie XL body, and we want to make sure that the distance is correct for the sight, so that when I start tuning tomorrow, I'm not going to be way off to the left or way off to the right. Now for the Fast Eddie XL, as I wrote down here, we wanted an 8mm gap. So that there is 6, nearly there. So that's 7.5. All right, 8mm gap. Let's cinch that up. Now obviously, because this is just quick and dirty, this is not at 90 degrees to anything. I am going to spend some time setting that up as well. I have got a video on how I set first, second and third axis. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. So let's just double check that measurement, make sure that it is correct. So we've got 8mm there. Now I'll cinch that up so that it doesn't move. And we're pretty good as far as that's concerned. Now one thing that I suppose I did forget to mention is when you do these measurements, try to make sure that your windage adjustment is centered on your sight so that you have full adjustability left and right once this is all, set up and ready to go. So that's the Fast Eddie XL sorted as far as that's concerned. Now for the Hogfather, we'll put that in there. And the distance we wanted on this one was 1 centimeter. Which is there. So let's cinch that up. Double check that we're at 1 centimeter, which we are. And sort of eyeball, make sure that it's straightish, but as I said, I'm going to be doing that all properly as well. So as far as the lens is concerned, with the Hogfather, the lens gets put in between the sunshade and the housing, and that comes out with these 4 screws here, which does mean that the pin is between you and the lens. Now, as far as any benefits to either of those options, like you the lens the pin or you the pin the lens is concerned, I'm not sure that there is actually a benefit to having one or the other. I wanted to try it with the Hogfather, which is why I swapped over the sight housings. And in all honesty, the lens is so close to the pin that it doesn't make the pin any bigger or smaller or anything like that. So I don't think there's actually any reason to having the lens between yourself and the pin now, or any benefit to it anyway. But if you guys know a reason as to why that would be the better option, let me know. I suspect that it was just a matter of convenience for Spot Hogg as far as the machining of these housings was concerned, because they wanted to have interchangeable scope ring sizes to put on them as well. So let me know what your thoughts are as far as that's concerned. This is pretty much the point of what I wanted to do in this video, so that's how I change the housings over really quickly to try and get them close enough that I'm not going to be spending hours and hours tomorrow making sure that my sight settings are correct. Alright, so the next thing that I'll need to do then is attach the sight to the bow, and then I can put my bow quiver on as well. Now for my bow quiver, I have a tight spot quiver, a 5-arrow quiver. Seems to do the job for me. There are many different options as far as bow quivers are concerned, as we're all aware, I'm sure. Now this isn't a review for a tight spot quiver or anything like that. All I wanted to say about that particular quiver is I like that you can adjust how close or how far away from the bow it sits. And I like that because of the way that the block that attaches to the bow is designed, you can change the angle that the quiver sits on the bow as well. So you can use it to somewhat balance the bow. The fact that it's on the same side as the sight means that, you know, it's probably preferable to run a sidebar, maybe a small one with a bit of weight to offset that. But again, I don't have the time to get all of that stuff sorted before the weekend. So I'm just going to be doing what I can to get it set up as well as I can in the time that I've got. One of the things I do want to mention though is that if you like using the big knob that comes with the Spot Hogg sights, it's not going to work with a tight spot quiver. You need to use the smaller sort of grub screw like I have on the Hogget, which then allows this block for the quiver to attach without that knob getting in the way. So that's what I'll be doing as well. I'll bring the camera in closer again while I attach that all up to give you guys a view of what it is that I'm doing. Alright, so the first thing that I'll need to do is take this one out of the block. This is the nice looking Spot Hogg big knob, and that's the dovetail mount. Now the grub screw is sitting in my Hogget, so I will take that out. And put it into this mount so that it's ready to go. Now you'll notice as well that the dovetail block for the Hogget is a different shape and size to the one that came with the Fast Eddie XL. The Fast Eddie XL one is a tiny bit lighter, which is again why I'm going to be using this one. So the next thing that I need are side screws. So I'll be back in a second. So as always in every Archer's box of bits, you've got tons of spare screws and, you know, all that sort of stuff. I've got my 2 side screws here, and we'll attach the block to the bow. Grab the other one. Now, always make sure when you do these things, you don't over tighten any bolts, because the last thing you want to do is strip holes or strip screw holes in your bow. It's a pain in the butt to fix. It's not impossible. You've got to drill it out, make a bigger hole, and then use bigger hardware to attach things to your bow. Ideally, you want to try and avoid that if you can. But like I said, it's not the complete end of the world if that does happen. So as far as attaching this to the bow is concerned, it's super simple. It literally just slides in. That grub screws in a little bit too far, so I'll back it out just a touch, which will then allow this sight to slide in further. Now, how far out you have the sight on the bow, again, personal preference. I mean, we can talk about torque tuning and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to worry about doing that today. For today's purposes, I'm just going to put it in there and say that that's good enough. So what I now need to do, I'll put this back on without the lens, because as I said, I'm not going to be using the magnification lens this time around. Alrighty, so that's that done, and the next thing I need to do is attach the quiver bracket, which again is a super simple process. Grab the right size Allen key, and the Spot Hogg sight housing blocks already have pre-threaded holes in them for you to do your quivers up. So one of the things that I was speaking about earlier was the fact that the tight spot quiver, you can adjust the angle that it sits on the bow, and one of the reasons for that is the holes in the quiver bracket are arc shaped, and that means you can change whatever angle you want the quiver to sit at to try and balance your setup, which is kind of nice. But for now, because I'll be tuning tomorrow, I'm just going to try and set it up so that it is vertically straight in relation to the bowstring. Now again, don't over tighten any of your screws. That's good enough. And then the tight spot quiver slides on with a dovetail and then has a cam lock to cinch it onto its bracket. It just slides on very easily like that, and then cam locks on there like that. And as I said earlier, let me get some of this stuff out the way so I can show you. By loosening the cam lock, you can have the quiver sit closer to the riser or further away and try and balance things out like that. So there you have it. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this video, how to change over the scope housings between the Fast-Eddie XL and the Hogfather. Also showing you guys how to attach a one-piece quiver to the Spot Hogg sight block. As you can see, it's super simple. The machining on these pieces is perfect, so everything lines up first time, every time. Just thought I'd talk a little bit about my hunting setup just quickly. Obviously, I've got the Fast-Eddie XL sight with the double pin. I've got a tight spot quiver, as you already know. The bow is a Hoyt Carbon Spider Turbo, which we already know. I'm using a QAD drop away rest, a little fuse front stabilizer, and the arrows that I shoot are PSE X-Weave Radial STL Hunters. I do use a 4-fletch setup on them as well because I find that it steers the broadheads a lot better. The broadheads I'll be using this weekend are 125 grain. They're made by an Australian company called Alien Archery. check them out on Facebook. They also have a website. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Very well designed, probably over-engineered as far as the structural integrity of them is concerned. The steel that the blades are made out of is fantastic, holds an edge just as good as most knives that I own. The gentleman who owns the company, Jason, is very friendly as well. He's helped me out a couple of times as far as these things are concerned. And he is venturing into other products as well, stabilizers, and he was talking a little while ago about doing a sight or something like that. So I could be wrong on that one, but if you're interested in these things, check him out for sure. I'll leave a link to his website in the description below. That's pretty much where I'm going to leave the video. So thanks for watching. Leave a like or a comment below. Remember to click on the subscribe button if you've not already done so, and hit the little bell icon so you receive a notification each time I upload a new video. I hope you all have a great week, and remember, just do good shots.